r/AskReddit. What really obvious thing have you only just realized? That when I was a kid and my dad would take me to the video store on Friday nights and he would go into the back room where only adults were allowed, that he was looking at porn. That the phrase mint condition means like new because it's the condition coins leave the mint in. I must have been around 11 to 12 years old, when I realized that, in order of appearance, during the end credits of a movie doesn't list the actors, actresses by who is the most good looking. I learned a couple years ago that it's not the mayor of bad news, it's actually, the bearer of bad news. I'm 25. Cilantro and coriander are the same plant. I only just today realized that the walk the plank on a boat is not a special edition pirates added to their ships as a means of public execution that looked like a little wooden diving board. It is, in fact, the very same plank as the gangplank you'd normally use to get on and off of the ship. It is not the presence of the plank that is threatening, but the absence of dock. That you have to add a can of water to Campbell's soup. Apparently I've been drinking straight condensed soup. The first time I visited the USA I was on my own and in NY and going to all the museums. I kept seeing signs that said, no strollers, and thought because we call strollers prams in the UK, that you guys are super strict about the proper amount of attention required to visit a museum. I actually pretended to show more interest than I had in order not to be thought of as some deadbeat out for a casual stroll. It wasn't until about day 3 that I saw a no strollers sign that included a graphic for idiots. Edit, woo. Thanks for the gold and silver and 40x the karma. That calling someone simple is just a nice way of calling someone stupid. Wife informed me of this, after 28 years of my grandma calling me simple. I realized at the age of 26 that narwhals are real because they were on an Octonauts episode. I walked into the room and was like, I thought they only do real animals on this show. Then the kid's dad said, you're joking. Right. I kept seeing the same Chinese characters on restaurant signs and I always wanted to know what it meant. A week ago I found out they mean restaurant. I used to always pour water into our coffee maker 1 glass at a time. It was such a pain in the ass, especially to fill the reservoir to the number of cups I wanted. Until I realized I could just fill the carafe with water, which has the exact same measurements, and pour the water in that way. I recently realized I was allergic to carrots. I just thought they made everyone's mouth numb, you know, just like almonds. I also learned recently that I have an almond allergy. I always thought, you can't have your cake and eat it too, was a weird saying because why wouldn't I be able to eat my freaking slice of cake? It's my cake. Nobody was telling me that I can't have my cake. Turns out they mean you can't eat the cake while also still retaining it. Once it is eaten, it is gone. An idiom I did not understand until this year. I am 27. Edit, thank you for the silver kind stranger. This sounds ridiculous, but I recently found out about the term, knee-jerk reaction. My whole life I had been saying it how I heard it, and just figured it was spelled something like, knee-jerk reaction, like it was some psychology term. English is not my first language, so I was mind blown when I realized how keys, kiss, he's, his, this, these, etc. differed in sound pronunciation. I first noticed this when I told my boyfriend I wanted a keys, and he looked very confused. Lol. Now I try my best to pronounce them properly. My whole life I thought pay-per-view was actually pay-per-view, because I had only ever heard people say it, and only recently saw it written out. My boyfriend did not know that his electric toothbrush has a timer on it that goes off at 1 minute and 2 minutes. He actually returned it and got a new one thinking it was broken, since the timer is just a brief sort of pause, reduction in the vibration. He would be like, WTF, I literally just charged this ducking thing thinking that the battery was already dying. One day, and I can't remember exactly what the conversation was, I brought up how I liked that my toothbrush let me know when I had brushed long enough, and it was like a light bulb went off in his head and suddenly he put it together that that was what his toothbrush was doing all along. That big ship's wheel I got to turn as a kid was not actually controlling the cruise ship. I realized that to be in one's birthday suit it means to be without clothes. I thought for the longest time it was a specific set of clothes you would wear on your birthday each year. I found out when I asked, what happens when you don't fit in your birthday suit anymore? I was 28 before I realized the meaning to the why is 6 afraid of 7 joke. I always just thought it was dumb. 7, 8, 9, like you're just counting. The electric bill wasn't paid until later in my life. I didn't realize time flies like an arrow, fruit flies like a banana, wasn't absurdist humor until college. For the longest time, I always thought prima donna was prima donna. Principal Belding from Saved by the Bell is named Belding. 26. The reason the cord hook on the vacuum spins is so you can take the whole cord off at once instead of unraveling it one loop at a time, like I have been my whole life. Edit, I learned how to spell cord today. That parents have children write letters to Santa so they can figure out what to buy them for Christmas. I can't believe how I never put that together after 32 years on this earth. I just thought it was fun little tradition. My bedroom door was broke and I finally got around to fixing it. Thought the knob was broke cause it was pushed in towards the door, so I pulled it out and realized that was how you lock the door. It called Men's Warehouse and not Men's Warehouse. It's been a couple years since I realized this and I just think that's a clever name. The villain in Halloween is not played by Michael Myers. For a long time I thought to bust a nut meant that you were going to kick a guy in the balls or beat him up. So anytime I was getting worked up or angry talking about some guy, the first would say, I'm going to bust his ducking nut, not knowing the real meaning. Nobody ever said anything, but it was always followed by my friends laughing, so I assumed it was because I was being dramatic. Years go by and my coworker is telling me about some rude person he met and I said, you should definitely bust that guy's nut, to which he paused and said, do you even know what that means? Suffice it to say I was extremely embarrassed and horrified when he explained it to me. Edit, oh wow, thank you for the silver. Glad my first silver had to do with busting a nut. Peas. For those who were asking, to bust a nut where I'm from means to ejaculate everywhere or jerk someone else off. Edit 2, gold. Wowee, I'm glad this made people laugh. Feeling much better knowing a lot of other folks made similar mistakes, ah ha ha. I had a boss that was under the impression that bust a nut meant to work extremely hard. Suffice to say our team meeting ended awkwardly when Sean would tell all of us to go bust a nut after the meeting. Super embarrassing, but in college I would order rum and cokes because I heard everyone else ordering the same. Turns out I misheard everyone and found out it was just rum and coke. When teenagers said, we're going to TP a house, I always thought it was teepee, and it never made sense to me since they just covered a house with toilet paper. I recently realized that TP was the initials for toilet paper. I'm 27. This girl I know has a dog named Dog. 2 years into knowing her and being around Dog, I was having a conversation with her sister-in-law and I said, I love the name Dog, how did she come up with that? Her sister-in-law responds, Dog, and I said, yay, it's a neat name. She started laughing and said, no, Dog, the way you spell dog, I'm still mind-blown about this law. That they put measurement stickers next to gas station doors so if a robber is running out of the store you can get a better estimate of their height. I always thought they were just there for something fun to do on road trip stops. When I was little we had an Australian shepherd named Sydney. I didn't understand why her name was Sydney until 18 years later. Saw a place labeled as public house when I moved nearby recently. It was at that moment I realized, oh that's why they call them pubs. It's short for public house. Up until last year I thought Nat Geo was a person. I then realized it was short for National Geographic. Not me, but my sister asked me about 2.5 months ago when we were watching John Wick 3 during the desert scene. She asked me if they were real and I asked if what were real and she said, sand lands, and I busted out laughing so goddamn hard and said, you mean deserts? Yes, they're real. Thinking about it right now got me laughing. By tornadoes sound like trains, they don't mean tornadoes whistle a choo-choo sound. I thought astigmatism was astigmatism. So I thought you could have two stigmatisms. Today my friend realized pipe cleaners were originally for cleaning pipes. After I suggested using one to clean a metal straw because it's similar to a pipe. I regret to inform you all that it just occurred to me the other day that the game is called Sims because they're in a simulation. I'm 26. I learned that allspice is actually one spice and not a blend of spices containing cinnamon and nutmeg. Edit, reworded. I do not think cinnamon and nutmeg are blends. Bikini Bottom is named after the nuclear bomb testing sites and the sea life is weird from the radiation. Also bikinis are named after the radioactive site as well. Personal injury lawyer commercials play more frequently during daytime TV because their clientele is injured, stuck at home, and watching daytime TV. In Pokémon, there is same type attack bonus, where if you use a move that is the same type as the Pokémon itself, then the move does 1.5x damage. People also refer to it as stab damage, which I thought was just a colloquial term for 1.5x damage. I only just realized that stab stands for same type attack bonus. When I was a kid, my mom told me my rabbit Rosie went to live on a farm. In my early 20s, I saw an episode of The Sopranos where everyone makes fun of Tony when he realizes his dog didn't really go to live on a farm. That's when I realized Rosie had not gone to a farm either. Edit, I would like to officially apologize for the cascading wave of terrible realizations my post has caused. Truly we sit on thrones of lies. 2. It turns out a lot of animals really do get to go live on the farm from the responses here, so that's Today the radio taught me Mariah Carey wrote and sang, "All I Want for Christmas Is You." All this time I thought it was just a cover that she did so well, people loved it more than the original. Turns out it is the original. Undergarments and socks are there to cover places that sweat and stink so that you don't sweat and stink on the thing on top of the undergarment and can replace the undergarment more often. The song, "It's Getting Hot in Here," isn't actually talking about here temperature. I felt very, very stupid. In the movie Cats vs. Dogs, when the dog goes, "Son of my mom," he's actually saying "son of a bitch," that the Houston Astros name comes from astronauts, and the Baltimore Ravens are because Edgar Allan Poe lived and is buried in Baltimore. I'm 30 and I realized a few months ago that howdy is cowboy for how do you do. Many Spanish words in cowboy, such as desperado, rodeo, etc. I just like the prospector voice slangification of certain words. So, for example, gallatin, or how gallant, and gallon, for braid, become 10-gallon hat. Tenure is the word, not 10-year, which is what I thought teachers got as like job security once they'd worked for 10 years. This is so stupid, but I didn't realize my moms were gay until I was almost 14 and I literally heard my mom say, "I'm gay," to my grandma as a joke. I knew that lesbians, same-sex, gay were relatively interchangeable, but it didn't click as my moms are lesbians, which is another term for being gay, and they are gay, until that moment. The Grammys are called that because the awards are gramophones. My friend 22YO only realized last year that dolphins have to swim and live in the water to survive. He thought they're land mammals, but they just really like to swim for fun. That Michelangelo's David is David from David and Goliath. How did I not know this? I thought it was just dude called Dave. Edit, I love how many of you just learned this today or very recently, and just thought he was some dude called Dave too. We got there in the end, guys, better late than never. Edit, I never knew there was a sling, I thought it was his trousers, yes, I honestly thought that. Never saw the rocks. Edit, I'm gonna need some more, Dave's not here, man, comments before this post is complete. Okay, this was a couple of years ago, but it was something I realized way too late in my life. You're supposed to use the towel to dry yourself after a shower. I was just wrapping it around myself and walking around in it until I air dried. I live in a part of Chicago called Greektown for 8 years and never realized the blue and white Christmas lights were meant to represent the colors on their flag. It just dawned on me today. Not me, but my husband just understood that Q is pronounced Q, and not key. His mind was blown. That Jessica Rabbit is not a rabbit, but took Roger Rabbit's last name. That to take off the plastic piece on top of deodorant you just simply twist the bottom a few times LMAO. I didn't know the characters on Family Guy had accents. Live in New England watching with my wife, not from here, and she says wow, they really nailed the accents. I say, what accents? Blew my mind when she explained not everyone talks like that. I live in Denmark, so English is not my native language, and I just realized that weekend means the end of the week. When I realize words I use all the time are painfully literal in their meaning. For example, breakfast implies you are literally breaking your fast. Afternoon is after the noon hour. I feel that when I find words like these, I've had an radical realization, but I'm just dense. Story time. When I was little, for some reason I hated toast. Just hated it. My parents always tried to make me eat it, but I always refused. My grandma decided to try something different. She took toast, cut it up into tiny squares, put some butter on them and called them little pillows. I ate them all the time. Only now, at 22 years old, did I realize it was just freaking toast. Oh, you want a freaking doozy. For years, I did not realize it was Mike Myers playing both Austin Powers and Dr. Evil. I don't know how I missed it, but it never twigged that it was the same actor. Felt like a right royal twat when that was pointed out to me. When the kids catch their mom kissing Santa Claus, it is because Santa is their dad dressed up. Not because Santa and mom have a once-yearly torrid affair.